It's something we all experience, yet it's one of the hardest parts of being human. Whether it's heartbreak from lost love, the grief of losing someone we care about, or the burden of a personal failure, suffering seems to find its way into our lives. But why do we feel it so deeply? Why does it affect us so profoundly? Today we'll explore the psychological significance of suffering and heartbreak, delving into the reasons we feel it, how it impacts us both negatively and positively, and how, through our pain, we often find the path back to ourselves. Watch to the end to gain some insight on getting through to the positive side and back to the self you are happy to be. The psychological roots of suffering. Suffering has deep psychological roots. At its core, suffering stems from the brain's desire to avoid pain and loss. Our brains are hardwired for survival, and anything that threatens our well-being, whether physical or emotional, triggers a response. When we face heartbreak or loss, the brain treats it as a threat to our sense of self and security. This is why emotional pain can feel just as intense as physical pain. In fact, research shows that the same parts of the brain that register physical pain also light up when we experience emotional distress. This shared neural pathway explains why a broken heart can literally hurt. But suffering isn't just about pain, it's about attachment. We suffer because we are attached to something, be it a relationship, a person, or an idea of how things should be. When those attachments are broken or taken away, we're left with a void, and that void triggers feelings of sadness, despair, and even hopelessness. Examples of what we suffer from. Suffering comes in many forms. It's not limited to romantic heartbreak, though that's often what comes to mind first. Let's look at a few common sources of suffering. Heartbreak from love. When a romantic relationship ends, it can feel like a part of us is lost. We grieve not only for the person we've lost, but for the future we imagined with them. Loss of a loved one. The death of a family member, friend, or even a pet can leave us with deep grief. It's not just the loss of the person, but the loss of the shared moments, memories, and the sense of permanence we falsely believe life holds. Personal failures, failing at something we deeply care about, whether it's a career, personal goal, or a creative endeavor, can create a spiral of self-doubt and regret. Existential suffering. Sometimes our suffering comes from grappling with the bigger questions in life. Why are we here? What's the purpose of it all? The sense of uncertainty and insignificance can lead to existential dread. While the sources of suffering vary, they all share a common theme. They challenge our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. When these foundational aspects of our identity are shaken, it's no surprise that we experience psychological turmoil, the negative psychological impact of suffering. There's no doubt that suffering can be deeply damaging to our mental health. When we go through something like heartbreak or loss, we often feel overwhelmed by negative emotions. Sadness, anger, guilt, anxiety. These emotions can cloud our thinking, lead to destructive behaviors, or even manifest as physical symptoms like headaches, fatigue, or loss of appetite. Prolonged suffering can also contribute to more serious mental health issues, such as depression or anxiety disorders. When we are stuck in a state of grief or pain, it can become hard to break out of the negative thought cycles that reinforce our suffering. We may feel like the world is against us, that we're not worthy of happiness, or that the pain will never end. This creates a mental loop that deepens our emotional wounds. Socially, suffering can isolate us. We may withdraw from friends and family, feeling like they can't understand what we're going through or fearing judgment for our pain. This isolation only amplifies the suffering, as we lose the support networks that could help pull us out of the darkness. The positive psychological impact of suffering. Yet, as paradoxical as it seems, suffering has a purpose. While the immediate aftermath of heartbreak or loss can be devastating, it can also lead to significant personal growth. The old saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," holds psychological truth. Heartbreak and self-discovery. Heartbreak, while incredibly painful, can be a catalyst for self-discovery. When we lose someone we love, we are forced to confront who we are without them. We examine our own identity, values, and needs, often realizing that we had compromised or neglected parts of ourselves in the relationship. Through this reflection, we can rediscover what truly matters to us and begin the process of self-love and healing. For example, after a difficult breakup, someone might realize they had sacrificed too much of their own happiness for the relationship. This realization can inspire them to build stronger boundaries in future relationships and prioritize their own well-being. Loss and new beginnings. When we experience loss, whether through death or a major life change, it can feel like an ending. But loss also opens the door to new beginnings. We learn to adapt, and in doing so, we often discover strengths we didn't know we had. The resilience that comes from enduring hardship equips us to handle future challenges with greater confidence. A person who loses their job, for instance, may initially feel devastated. But that loss might push them to pursue a new career path or develop skills they never considered before, ultimately leading to a more fulfilling life. Psychological resilience. Suffering can build resilience. It teaches us that pain, while inevitable, is survivable. Every time we overcome a painful experience, we become more equipped to handle the next one. This doesn't mean suffering becomes easier, but it does mean we gain the tools to process and move through it more effectively. The mental endurance we develop is invaluable, helping us face future adversities with a stronger mindset. Suffering as a motivator. Sometimes suffering lights a fire within us. A heartbreak might motivate someone to focus on their career, fitness, or personal passions. Loss might inspire someone to live more fully and chase after long-held dreams. While suffering can knock us down, it can also push us forward into the next, often better chapter of our lives. Conclusion: embracing suffering as part of life. Suffering in all its forms is a fundamental part of life. While we may wish we could avoid it, it's inescapable. The pain of heartbreak, loss, and failure can be excruciating, but it's also transformative. It forces us to look inward, to question our beliefs, and to ultimately grow into stronger, more resilient individuals. The key to navigating suffering is not to avoid it, but to embrace it as part of the human experience. Through suffering, we can find meaning. Through heartbreak, we can find ourselves again. And through loss, we can discover new beginnings. So the next time you face suffering, remember that while it hurts now, there is hope on the other side. You will come out stronger, wiser, and more in tune with who you are, and perhaps who you are meant to be. Thank you for watching, and if you're going through something tough right now, know that you're not alone. Let's embrace the journey, pain and all. Because on the other side, we often find the best version of ourselves. Like and subscribe. And let's keep learning and growing together at Random Facts channel.